very much for having me today. I have a little bit of a cough, so I may need this over time. Pleasure being here and sharing some of the work that we've done in the past. So, this is not going to work. Talking with Paul, as he said about a year ago, he kind of nicknamed this talk A Tale of Two Seronyms, and I thought that's appropriate. At Smith Group, we had the pleasure of working on projects for each of the Seronyms. We worked on the renovation of the Cranbrook Art Museum and Collections Edition that Elio Seronin did, and the General Motors Design Dome at the GM Tech Center that Aero Seronin did. And we continue to do work at the Tech Center today, which is really kind of a marvelous place in the world. So we're going to talk a little bit about these two projects and a little bit about the two Seronyms. How many people here know Seronin? Good. So I'm not an expert on Seronin. I don't claim to be an expert, so big disclaimer. What you're going to hear today is what I've learned myself through both reading and working. Some of it might be contradictory to those people who are actual Seronin knowledge gurus. So both of these projects are outside of Detroit. The Tech Center is about 20 miles north of Detroit in Warren, Michigan. And Cranbrook is in Bloomfield Hills, which is about 30 miles northwest of Detroit in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. If you ever come to Detroit, Cranbrook is an open campus. You can go there and tour it. It's wonderful. It's a real gem. If you're going to try to see the GM campus, it's a closed campus, so you better make preparations ahead of time before you do that. How many people have been to Detroit? Just a quick question. So those of you who haven't, Detroit, those of you who had, Detroit is going through a marvelous renaissance right now. It is unbelievable the amount of construction that's happening within the city. We had 250 restaurants open last year alone within the city, so it's really going gangbusters, and I invite you all. It's a great place, and when you're there, go to Cranbrook. But just so that you know, back in the early and mid 20th century, Detroit was a real mecca. And it was a mecca for architects because of these two gentlemen, Elio Seronin here and Aero Seronin there. People came to work for them and to learn from them. This is a list, a partial list of some of those names you might recognize. It's pretty good when you have a campus or you have an office somewhere and you have, Caesar Pelli running prints for you. But these are the greats, and they were all in Detroit in the 50s. As Paul said, I went to Lawrence Technological University. It was filled with alumni of the Seronin offices, and those were my professors. And so being able to work on a couple of these Seronin projects was really quite a joy. So I'm going to do it in chronological order. It's just easier. We'll take on the two projects and talk a little bit about the similarities and differences. So the Cranbrook Art Museum, we did a renovation of the museum itself, and then we did the Collections Edition. So here you see the Orpheus Fountain, which is in the foreground, and then the fantastic peristyle hall, and then the museum is this component right in here. So just a little bit of history. Elio Seronin was in Helsinki, Finland. He came to America by virtue of a competition. He did the 1922 Chicago Tribune competition and came in second place. But his second place design was what skyscrapers were basically built on afterwards. It became kind of the prototype of the American skyscraper in the early 20th century. And you see the designs like this in many cities throughout the United States, and then from then on out. He was 49 years old, and he immigrated to the United States the next year. So his career in the U.S. started with a competition. He then became a professor at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And there he met Henry Booth as an architectural student. Henry Booth is the son of George Booth. George Booth owned the Detroit News. A very wealthy individual. He bought a little over 300 acres out in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, and he wanted to start a school much like the American Academy in Rome. And so he brought Seronin to the school, made him the president of the school and chief architect. And Seronin worked there, Elio, for the rest of his life. So he started in 1925 and worked all the way to 1942, doing high schools for boys and girls, an Institute of Science, and then the Academy of Art, and consequently at the end, the museum and the library, which is what we're going to talk about. So here's the campus on the end, and these are the projects that Saarinen did. Kind of interesting, Frank Lloyd Wright went to the Kingswood School, which is the only project that Saarinen did at one time, and Frank Lloyd Wright said it was the second best building in America. So it kind of shows you where that's all from. Cranbrook, they're very popular, and they're, they've hired a lot of Black Cape architects over the years to add to their campus. So we have, Stephen Hall, Todd Williams, Rafael Maneo, all around the campus. But we're going to concentrate on this little section right here, which is where we did the museum renovation and collections addition. So it's just kind of looking at where the plan is of the museum. So I showed you the Peristyle Hall early, that's it right there. And to the west of the Peristyle Hall is the library, and then to the right is this T-shaped building, which is the museum. The museum has 3 galleries, and they're all different width, lengths, and heights. And they were all made that way so the artists could choose the gallery they wanted would best suit their artwork, and Saarinen did that purposely. The library is 2 stories. It's this upper floor here and a story below. The museum is 3 stories. It's this upper gallery here, and then below it is a lower gallery and office space. And then the 3rd floor down in the basement was the collection storage. And we'll get to that in just a second. So here's what it looked like when it opened. Saarinen designed this for 2 reasons. One, he wanted to have a place for the Academy artists to display their artwork, usually once a year at the end of the year, and also as a permanent display of the Booth family's artwork, which mostly was antiquities and mostly 3-dimensional sculpture. So a couple of things you see here in the building, he designed these lighting fixtures with indirect lighting. You don't see a lot of direct lighting in these photos, and there really wasn't any in the original design. The other kind of components that he had is that all of the artwork hung on these, what we refer to as hanging walls, and I'll get to that. It was really a brilliant idea by Saarinen to come up with these hanging walls. What it did is it separated the wall that the art hung on from the exterior wall of the building, which allowed it to maintain a more constant temperature and humidity, which is very important to art. And you see a lot of these kind of designs in it, his work as being really kind of ahead of their time. This is a collection storage. This is in that piece below the building in that kind of basement. It's kind of like your grandmother's basement. There really wasn't any control for the collection, even up till we got to the building in just past the year 2000. They had to put plastic over the artwork because it leaked. And what really started the whole impetus for this renovation of the museum and the collections addition was twofold. One, Saarinen designed it as an art museum for the campus, but it has since transformed into a major contemporary art gallery. And it had traveling exhibits from all over the country coming here to show off contemporary art in Cranbrook. Well, those exhibits were now avoiding Cranbrook because they couldn't maintain the temperature and humidity quality that needed to be maintained in a museum setting. And Cranbrook was losing those traveling exhibits. Secondly, they were going to be bequeathed some Andy Warhol originals. And the people that were going to give them the Andy Warhol originals said, we can't do it if you're going to store them in a place like this. You need a collection space to do that would be appropriate for this work of art. So Stuart and Maxine Frankel came in and made a large donation that was a matching donation. They then raised the funds, and they then started out renovating the museum and adding the collection to the building. So this is that hanging wall idea that Saarinen had, and you can sort of see it right here. There was a separation between where the art hung and the exterior wall, and that gave it sort of this kind of independent kind of piece. But it still wasn't enough. There was no vapor barrier in this building. The mechanical system was from 1941 with a little bit of work on it, and there was very little insulation, so it couldn't maintain temperature very well. We ripped the building down totally from the inside, ripped it down to the back of the wall, added the insulation, added the vapor barriers, and then rebuilt the building with a new mechanical system within it. So part of the reason for doing what we're doing here and understanding when you do museums is these are the beautiful entry doors. They're cast bronze doors. absolutely gorgeous. It's about 10 feet high. And that's how you enter the museum. You enter the library the same way on the other side of the peristyle. And just a couple of cool things. I mean, I don't even know how he did this, but this is all relief. That's all cut out of stone. So basically, the stone had to be really thick, and they cut away so much stone to reveal, the lettering for the museum. Usually we cut stone the other way, but Saarinen decided we were going to do it this way. Well, one of the things that happens when you create a museum and you maintain 70 degrees plus or minus 1 degree and 50% humidity plus or minus 3 or 4% humidity is that in the winter in Michigan, it's that temperature on the inside and it's 0 degrees on the outside. These doors would freeze shut. There's no way they would actually work. So what we had to do was take what Saarinen had is this small vestibule here with these beautiful entry doors. You can see them here. And we had to extend the pathway into the museum for the winter. We couldn't just go from that bronze door there to these entry doors and maintain a separation without freezing those doors shut. So we had to make some modification. We took the vestibule apart and added these sort of transition zones with the glass walls in order to keep those doors operating. So in the summer, they can still open the doors as they normally would. They do that for a lot of events. They just open them totally and use it for kind of dinners and such. But in the winter, to be able to accommodate this special need, we had to make provisions for that. We also, in contemporary artwork, you need to have direct lighting. Much of the contemporary art wants direct lighting. We had to find a way to do that. So these coffers, as I said, were originally put as indirect lighting that Saarinen put in. In 1970, there was a fire in the cathode tubes, and they turned off all the coffered lights. So for a generation and a half, nobody even knew how they worked. Nobody knew what kind of light came out of them. I had never seen them operating in my lifetime. And so when we re-lamped them with LED lighting, we then designed a mechanism so that we could add down lighting within them and direct lighting. We then relit the entire space with new lighting, and it brought it back to more of its original intent. So this is what those galleries look like today. You can see we added the coffers back in. They're all lit. We added opportunities in track lighting so that you could light the artwork as required. We put new mechanical systems in that are fed from a slot in the ceiling and returned in the floor. So we got the appropriate mechanical space inside that to maintain humidity and temperature. And of course, we rebuilt the hanging walls with their white oak trim and replaced them. There were some of them missing in the building, and we had to replace those also. One of the other components you see in contemporary artwork today is that a lot of it is multimedia. There was no electrical in this building to begin with, so we had to add electrical outlets in the floor to make sure that could all happen. One of the interesting things is this is a Frank Stella painting. That's the largest painting that Cranbrook owns. In all of our design, we have to try to, that's 18 feet long. We had to make it so they can move it without taking it off the frame. You'll see that as we get to the collection building. But you can start to see, these are the galleries. This was the first show. After the gallery, since that first show, they don't have so many downlights. They did the first show and they left all the lights up, but you can see only part of them are actually on, but they didn't take them down for the first show. So I said we also had to add the collection building for them so that to collect for all their artwork. And so this is the collection building that's just to the north of the T. In order to do this, I needed to understand really what was Saarinen's thoughts and how he did things. So I went back and did this study of all these courtyards in the boys' school. And they're all these sort of J-shaped courtyards that are open-ended, and trying to understand just what that all meant. And I found some original concept sketches that Saarinen did. And when he designed the whole academy here, this little piece here is Rafael Maneo's studio building, and we'll get to that. But when he designed the academy, he wanted the entrance to be here off the Lone Pine Road. And he designed it so that you would come through here, go around the Trident Fountain, and then up the stairs to the peristyle. And to the north of that is the Orpheus Fountain. He had designed an idea master plan that there would be more studio buildings for the Art Academy on this side of the Trident Pond. And then there was an L-shaped dormitory located here. And so that you would come in, you would transition around here up the steps to the peristyle, and then this round Orpheus pond would then lead you back down the Grand LA, as they called it. And you can see Todd Williams designed the natatorium here to receive that kind of thinking. But before this building was even finished, Cranbrook changed everything around and said you're going to enter from the north. So Saarinen's original concept was changed before he even finished the building. And so everybody came in from the north, so the idea of an L-shaped dormitory wasn't going to work anymore. So here's where Saarinen wanted you to enter. You would walk around across the Trident Pool or around it, and then up these grand steps to the Peristyle Hall, and you would enter this door, that's that bronze door, into the museum and into the museum that way. Very, very beautiful entry sequence. So at the other side, you would come past the Orpheus Fountain, which is right over here, and you would enter and come into the museum this way through the door. What's happened now over the course of history is that this archway here is called the Stair of the Chinese Lion, and if you go to here, you go down a set of stairs, and there's a parking lot down there, and that's where everybody parks to come to the museum. So they park down there, they come up these stairs, and they walk along this path and turn and come up to the museum this way. This is our collection building on the side. There is a drop-off to the north here of the Orpheus Fountain, and so our collection building intent was just to be a subtle, very quiet addition, just sitting off to the side, not really trying to compete with all of this entry proscenium. So that you can see in plan here, here's the addition. So here's the drop off, you would come up, here's the Orpheus Fountain, you would enter and move into to the museum. Oh, oops, sorry. Over here is where everybody parks today, and they walk up these stairs by the Chinese Lion and walk in this way. Nobody comes through the way that Saarinen originally intended this to be. But I think the presentation and the entry sequence is still one of the best in the world, even though it's backwards. So I said the museum is 3 levels. This is the main level of the museum. Here's the collection building. You can see we're not even connected here. All of our connection occurs at this level under the stair. So we connect under the stair and then up through the lower gallery and then up into the building, the museum itself. And the lowest level, which is here, is where all that storage used to be, down in this area. Now that's all turned over to the camp. So we're able to do that. Our new collection building houses the new mechanical plant right here that supports the collection building, the museum, and the library. So everything was very well taken care of in that capacity. And here's the collection building as it sits today. You can see Maneo's studio building in the background here. We chose to use the same red brick. A little bit about that later, that matched Maneo's red brick. This is the entry for services to the museum. So everything coming to the museum comes through this service entry right here, which is kind of the front door now, because here's the parking. So we enclosed it with hot dip galvanized panels, so you can start to see it here. The 3 massing of the building stepping down the hill. So one thing that Saarinen did on the Cranbrook campus is he custom designed every door. So any building you go into will have a very unique door, custom designed. So figuring we better continue that pattern, right? So this is our front door, so to speak, even though it's a sort. So we custom designed this large door. So this panel here is mechanically open, but the small panel here is manually open. So you get the idea of how to open it. So if you go grab this right here, there's a nice handle for you. You can grab it and pull that open and go in that way. I wouldn't recommend it. It's pretty heavy, but it's kind of cool. Just show the sense of it. So we chose hot dip galvanized panels because Maneo chose lead-coated copper on his studio building. And we couldn't use lead-coated copper. We're sustainable here, so lead was out of the question. So we used hot dip galvanized for the metal. And you can see this beautiful kind of expression that the hot dipping did to the panels. And as they were putting these things up, I was there, standing there watching them, and one of the builders came up and he's just shaking his head, like, you know, only at Cranbrook. And I said, well, that's kind of the point, isn't it? And so it really is. These things are absolutely beautiful there at the point. So here's the brick. And I said we matched on this parking lot side the red brick that Mineo used. And I wasn't really thrilled about the red brick Mineo used. I don't think it matches at all the buckskin Cranbrook brick of the original building. Now we call it buckskin Cranbrook. When Saarinen used it, he used it on a number of buildings here at Cranbrook. It was then used everywhere, all over Detroit, all over the Midwest. It was made from Claycraft brick in Ohio in Beehive kilns. They ran through the clay. There's no more clay, so you can't make buckskin brick anymore. So trying to match it is almost impossible. Many people have tried, many brick companies have tried. It's just not very, very easy to do. We good? Okay. I'm trying to talk into the microphone, and I usually don't stand in one place very long. So Mineo used red brick because he didn't want to try to match the buckskin in a poor way, which is, you know, what many of us do when we look at that. But I didn't think the red brick matched really that well, and so we looked for a series of bricks that I thought would match better. And what we arrived at is this sort of darker brown brick. And what we did was play around with this red brick. We took it, we clear glazed it, and fired it a second time. And that's how we achieved this brick. And when we did the mock-up of it, I went out to Cranbrook, took my lovely wife Mary with me. We looked at the mock-up of the brick, and I'm like thrilled, it's looking great. And then she says, are you going to use that old brick on that new building? And I said, perfect. We have the perfect brick. And so that's what we use, that old brick on this new building. And so you start to see it here. This is the brown brick, the red brick. What we did to get the brown brick on the entry side of the building and the red brick on the parking lot side of the building was we sort of fingered it together as we wrapped north and south. And you can see that here. So here's the brown brick that wraps around. And we use this little stainless steel detail to separate the two bricks and move them slightly on a plane with one another in order to achieve kind of a nice rationale for using them. This 8x8 window is the only window in the building, and that is a window into the seminar room, the only people space really in the building itself. So here you can see the brown brick, its relationship to the buckskin, and I think if you see it in person, hopefully you'll agree that it really has a nice presence, with one a little darker than the other, kind of recedes a little bit back. We used a zinc zipper to connect the two. And then Saarinen, at his entrances, this is the girls' school, at his entrances he always liked to put these little benches that you could sit on by the front door. And you'll see if you go to the Science Museum, Stephen Hall put a bench by the front door. And if you go to the Natatorium, Todd Williams put a bench by the front door. So Urbanek has to put a bench by the front door. So, but we don't have a front door, right? Because we get to this from inside of the building. So I saw the archway here as our front door to the thing, and we put a nice stainless steel bench here and kind of designed it in the spirit of Cranbrook in a similar sense, in a little modern approach. So I said we don't have a front door on the outside. We do have a front door on the inside. So this is at the lower gallery. Maxine Frankel is a great person, and I said, well, Maxine, we had to give you a door, kind of a secret door, so you could bring your friends into the collection building. So we designed the stainless steel panel in one of the niches that Saarinen had that rotates slightly out of the way, and then you have your expression to move into the collections building. And a little piece of artwork here to kind of entice you to move into that space. Those little pieces of artwork are found all over the campus. This is one of Saarinen's courtyards. There's these sort of little follies that really kind of express art, so we thought it would be very good in the collections building to have the same kind of expression, because Cranbrook wanted their collections to be a teaching collections and a visual collection. So they wanted to be able to bring art students into the collection and show them the work, even though it may not be on display in the galleries themselves. One of the other things you'll see as you look at those courtyards are these long vistas that Saarinen created with sort of ideas of what's happening at the other end of these. And we use that very much in our design of the long corridor that connects the museum, the art collection, to the museum itself, where we lit it periodically to kind of give it sort of this sort of mystique and intrigue as one would move through it. At the time, Reed Kroloff was the director of the Art Academy, and he said this would be a perfect place for aliens. And we were thinking that some movie company would be here, but he said it would have to be aliens that love art. So here's the collection. You can start to see this is the entrance over to the ceramic collection, and the same type of thing happening. They're showing their collection as you would move through. Another special door. This is into the seminar room. So the door is a mahogany door and stainless steel trim. And when you move in, it's right on line with that one window in the building. So that when you go through here, the seminar is to the right, and to the left is this space, which is the print collection. And so that, again, the teaching kind of component of the print collection, you could take prints into the seminar room or back into the print room and have students learning as you go. So this is all on that lower level, the connection level between the two. And then we move up into the real museum portion, which is on the upper floor. This is where the three-dimensional and two-dimensional basically components are kept. You see all the textiles here. Eero Saarinen's sister Pippin was a textile designer and did a lot of the textiles at Cranbrook. And so some of these are hers. And then all the flat work is stored here. And what Cranbrook does is they curate these panels. So if they have art students coming in and they want to talk about how contemporary art transitions through a series of history, they'll curate a panel so that they can teach the students how that works. Or they'll curate two different artists so they can start to talk about that. And we left space here so that they can house a class of students, mostly from the academy themselves or from the schools at Cranbrook, but also from schools around Detroit that are coming here to be able to show them what the artwork is. And then the three-dimensional artwork within Cranbrook is done in a very similar fashion. All the chairs are here. By the way, all of these chairs were designed at Cranbrook except 3 of them. So you guys can tell me which 3. I got 2 of the 3 when I was there, but it's pretty hard to get. And then they also have more tapestries and three-dimensional objects. Liebeskind did, when he was director of the academy there, he did these beautiful wood models. They're like 6x6 of the entire Cranbrook campus. They're stored there. The Dulles model that Eero Saarinen did for Dulles is a 14-foot model. It's stored there. And so the elevator that you see here had to accommodate that Stella print, which is 18-foot long. It works on a diagonal on that elevator, and it's a 15-foot deep elevator, so Saarinen's Dulles Airport model will fit on the elevator also. So get all that work in. The collections building is designed that you can take a 15 by 10 by 10 object anywhere in the building. And lastly, with Cranbrook, we were also asked to look at the master plan for a archives building, which isn't built yet, or they're trying to fund, but that was our archives building. What we looked at was, here's our entrance, the Orpheus Fountain, this is the Peristyle Hall, the museum, this is an early collections building when we had the entrance this way. This is Maneo's studio building. He also did a design for the expansion of the museum with a front door right here. So we designed this major drop-off area to accommodate another thin building, which would be in keeping with all of the other Saarinen work at the Academy. So that's Elio Saarinen's work. And then we had the great pleasure almost immediately after that of working at the GM Tech Center on Eero's work. And we did the renovation of the dome. General Motors has used this dome since 1956 to design automobiles, to use in the analytical expression of those automobiles, to to showcase those automobiles and to sell them really to the press and to the, not to the public, but mostly the press and to auto magnets. It is a 200-foot diameter dome sitting in a courtyard, and that courtyard is a brick wall, 9 foot high. So, little history on Arrow that I thought was really kind of intriguing. Arrow, grew up with his father. He worked on a lot of projects at Cranbrook with his father. He never authored a project at Cranbrook, which is kind of unique. Even though he worked there almost his whole life, and his office was right off of Cranbrook. But he did enter a competition, the Jefferson National Expansion Memorial Competition. We sometimes know it as the St. Louis Arch, but that wasn't what it was. And he got first place at 39 years old. And that really launched Arrow's career as an architect. So much like his father was launched in the competition, his career was launched in the same way. By the way, the arch was completed in 1965, 4 years after Arrow died. And many of you might know that Arrow died at 51 on the operating table. He had a brain tumor and died. So he basically did all of his work in 10 years. So if you look at all of that great work that Saarinen did, it was pretty amazing that he could do it all in roughly 10 years' time. So when he took on the task of the GM Tech Center, his father and he were working on it before World War II. There are a number of designs for that. And then World War II came and everything was put on hold. And then after World War II, his father passed in 1950. So Saarinen talked GM into keeping him on to design the building. GM's lead designer was Harley Earl. He became good friends with Arrow. They were kind of both the playboys of the time, and so they stayed on, and Arrow designed the Tech Center. This is one of the major quotes that he said. It's GM is a metalworking industry, a precision industry, and a mass production industry, and he designed the building, all of the buildings in that way, with many, many, many inventions on that campus, some of which we still use today. People call it the Versailles of industry, and it was designed in a 5-year span from 51 to 56. The dome itself was the last piece that was built on the campus. So here it is, and I look at this picture and I try to imagine, Warren, Michigan at the time was farmland. So I'm imagining these engineers in 1950, 51, 52, driving out of the city of Detroit to this farmland and happening upon this, and knowing this is where you're going to work. It's pretty amazing, just amazing. Man-made lake, beautiful water tower, and then all the buildings surrounding it. On this end of the lake is research, which is this stair. And on this end of the lake is design, which is this stair and lobby. And so at both ends, it's very, very wonderful kind of opportunities. I still can't imagine coming to work and having to walk up this thing to your office and getting into doing work. And I don't know how people did the work there, or even this. When I first went to GM, I had broken my ankle, and we were going up into the studio, and they have an elevator over here, and they were going to take me to the elevator, and I said, no way, I'm going up the stair. So I struggled up the stair with my broken ankle. So just a point, this is the GM Tech Center, but just prior to the Tech Center, Mies van der Rohe was designing IIT. And Saarinen used that as kind of his model for the Tech Center layout. Mies did a design that was pedestrian oriented, but Arrow did a design that was automotive oriented. These are not at the same scale. This is about a mile from here to here. This probably would easily fit within the lake here. So the scales are quite different, but the idea and the concept is very much the same. So Saarinen at least learned from one of the best. It's on a 5-foot grid, so I've been told, although I've never done it, that you can measure from anywhere, any place, and find it on a 5-foot grid. The entire campus is on a 5-foot grid. So it's pretty amazing. He used it through, these are all the kind of quotes about this modular principle, which Saarinen employed. So here's the dome, here's the courtyard around it, and then these are the design studios here. And fabrication is down here. So this was all, at the time, referred to as styling. as opposed to design. Research is at the north end. And then the process engineering, the service center, and all of design engineering was here. And there's a beautiful cafeteria in between. And everything is designed for the automobile. So here's the dome in its courtyard, which was 240 feet by 600 feet. And you can see the grid not only works on that pattern, but it works on the Z grid also, fitting within. And everything is on a proportional system. So Saarinen very much aligned himself in this sort of mathematics that was around with these pure kind of simple forms. This is the original drawing of the dome. It's a 200-foot diameter here and then a 180-foot internal dome. And you'll see that in just a minute. All the support spaces are kind of fitting in between the two. Toilet rooms, mechanical, there's a conference room up here that we'll talk about. There's an elevator right here that takes you down to a tunnel system that gets the cars over to the design studio. So if they wanted to bring cars into here with no one seeing them, they would go through the tunnel and come up this elevator. These are turntables, these round pieces here, so you can put an automobile on it and spin them around so they can show off. This is the major stage of the building. And then internally here, step down 2 feet, is this kind of flat floor for auto showing. Oh, by the way, if you look real close right here, it says Smith Instrument Grills. So the predecessor of Smith Group, associated with Saarinen, and we did all the working drawings. So when we had to renovate this building, it was pretty easy. We had all the drawings. There are, right in this set, there are 19 architectural pages to this set. In our renovation set, there are 45 architectural pages. So a little bit different time. So I talked about the wall. The wall here was, it's a 9-foot high wall, and there was no gray brick originally put in the wall, or white brick for that matter. The wall was designed out of glazed brick that was called tobacco blend. It was kind of a greenish with red in it blend. And it was the tobacco that the engineers would chew. That was the color, and it was one of Saarinen's favorite colored bricks. All of the glazing, so the way these were built, and all the buildings on the tech center were built, was that they're, again, Claycraft brick. Claycraft made the red brick. The red bricks were brought to Cranbrook. They built some beehive kilns were brought to the GM Tech Center. They put beehive kilns on the Tech Center, and they glazed the bricks there. The Cranbrook artisans glazed the bricks and refired them to the glazed bricks that you see on the campus. And there's about 11 colors of glazed brick on the campus. We couldn't find any of the formulas for any of the glazing. We looked here, we looked in GM, we looked at Cranbrook, we looked at Yale. Can't find any of the formulas for the glazing. The reason we know there were no gray bricks in this wall is on the back side of the wall there was an electrical room connected to the building from day one. And there were bricks in that room that had never seen the light of day. And they were not gray. They looked like that. So all of that color that was in there over 60 years of being in the sun and in the weather had converted them all to gray and white. But they weren't. They were green and red. We couldn't make the bricks exactly like they were because we didn't have the formula. So we hired a ceramicist out of Ohio to come and help us match the brick as best we could. So this is an 11 blend brick to get us as close as we could to the original brick. We went through about 20 mock-ups to get this done and make it work. So you see this is the orange brick here are the design studios. The yellow brick in the background is the administration. We replaced all of the Siberian elms that were there that were falling, breaking apart. They were old and falling down. This is a 9-foot high wall. It's glazed brick on both sides, 660 feet by 440 feet all the way around. So that's a lot of brick. We redid these garden lights that Saarinen designed and put them back in. They were all painted black at the time, but Saarinen's original color was this kind of green color, and replaced all the landscape within to what was originally there. And then we went to work on the dome itself. So here's where the dome is. You can see the double dome, right? So here's the big dome on the outside, the aluminum dome, and I can share a little story about that. At the time, Harley Earl, who was head of design at GM, was hired away by Alcoa Aluminum, and GM didn't want him to go. So they made a deal with Alcoa Aluminum that he would work half-time at Alcoa Aluminum and half-time at General Motors. That's cool. You can get it. That's a great gig. Saarinen wanted a stainless steel dome. Harley Earl wanted an aluminum dome. Yeah, and he won. It's an aluminum dome made with Alcoa aluminum. So there you go. Underneath that is a 3/8" steel plate. This is made by the same people that actually made the water tower, and it's made in the exact same way. It's a 3/8" steel plate made just like a water tower. Set up on columns. There's a tension ring at the base, and it's 9-foot high columns. But that's the exterior dome, and then on the inside is hung perforated metal with acoustical baffles behind it, and then all the mechanical and everything fits in between this space. It's very much like the back of house of any performing arts center. There's catwalks up there, and everything hangs down within. So here's your elevator that takes you down to the tunnel and back over to the design studio. So we did everything in the dome itself. We upgraded the stage. We upgraded the toilet rooms. We placed in which was an old conference room you'll see in a minute. We made it a boardroom, and I'll talk to you about that. All of this was done to make this dome relevant. So when Saarinen designed it, again, it was a stroke of genius. This didn't exist in the world until he came up with it. To really design an automobile and to understand it, you needed a shadowless environment. Any shadow will change on the color of the car, so he had to do a shadowless environment. So he designed a dome that was indirectly lit. You could put automobiles in it, and there'd be no shadow. So the designers and the engineers could look at fit and finish. They could see where the slopes were in the cars and all of this good stuff. That's perfectly right. This has been copied by every automotive design group in the world. Toyota, Ford, Chrysler, Fiat, everywhere. They have domes now because that's how you do cars. And you need them big because cars are big. But to make it relevant for General Motors, it's more than just the analytics of a car, it's also the showplace of a car, and they use this for show. And so this is what it looked like when we arrived. It had a very dark floor, and they installed this sort of funky ring here with direct lighting on it. And they use that when they showcase the cars. They want to put direct lighting on the cars and showcase, which would be a different kind of mode that it would be in. But you can see the indirect lighting here. And it's all acoustically treated, so you don't have that echo effect that you would have if it was a solid dome itself, or a solid surface. And then there's the beautiful gray space around it. So we transformed it to this. We redid the lighting. It's all theatrical lighting. It's all run by an iPad, basically, to do that. We added direct lighting into the bottom of the ring, which didn't exist, to get highlights on the automobiles. We lightened the floor so you could get great reflection, but not total reflection, which the dark floor was given. These panels are all aluminum battens. We found the original company that made the original aluminum battens because they made more for us, so that we could have them to finish off some spaces. And these are very, very heavy theatrical curtains that we had redone very much for acoustical needs. So that is really kind of the showplace for the cars, and that's what they do with it. As I said, they use it for multimedia in a lot of ways. They want to have glitz and glamour. So all of these LED lights are color-changing lights, and we can do any kind of show all over. We can do all kinds of things. We can do. We can project onto the dome from cameras and such to make all kinds of displays. This was how they were doing multimedia when we arrived. They had this sort of tricky little setup here. I mean, this is General Motors, you know, and we're like, wow, this is how you guys. So they asked us to kind of work on what are we going to do with that and make that a great place to showcase cars, to run this multimedia. They wanted it in the dome. They didn't want it outside or anywhere. They wanted it right in the dome because they changed things on the fly a lot. So we designed this space, this piece here, which is their new control center. It's all done with solid surface material, and we used the hood ornament off a 1943 Cadillac as our kind of guide to the profile that we used to design this within. And it sits like an object in the space. Saarinen did that a lot. If you go to the design center and you look in the lobby, there's a little teacup kind of entry desk, same kind of thing. He would put these little jewels, much like his father put those little follies, you know, of artwork in the gardens and such, and we tried to mimic in our collection building. Saarinen put these sort of physical, usable elements in his designs and made them pieces of art. The other piece that we did is there was a conference room right here that was not used very well. And what GM does here in a big way is when they need to put a car out on the street, they're designing the vehicle, they're running through all their engineering, and before they go to make it a production vehicle, that move to go from design to production is about $1 billion move. So you have to be sure of what you're going to do when you do it. So they wanted this boardroom here where they could have management come in. There's a projection screen up here where they could learn the finances, the engineering, the marketing, and the vehicles themselves, so they can make a very good decision when they're going to take something to market. So, you know, before this Chevy Volt went to market, it was done right here. All of it was identified, and all the management of General Motors were right there, so they could see it and move between product and what they call 3D principles or mass principles to understand about bringing it to market. This is what this room looked like previously. They also use this place as a show place. They have a lot of formal events here. And so when Saarinen designed it in the 50s, it was very much a male-dominated engineering place. Now GM's workforce is much more diverse. Mary Barra runs General Motors. And so we had to take the toilet rooms and make them more appropriate for women who might be there in formal attire, as well as men in tuxedos. And so we changed what was utilitarian toilet rooms into something that would be much more usable for those purposes. We also took one of the old storage rooms and made it into a green room, so anyone who would be there for a major presentation would have kind of a wonderful place to warm up. The stage is there and set, all redone so that they can show off their vehicles. These are those turntables that I mentioned in the floor. There's 3 of them. And then you can see the courtyard in the background so that they can be inside as well as outside in the courtyard and still be all private, because all of this is very, very private. This is probably the most private space in the GM property to get into. And then from the outside looking in from the courtyard, you may have heard about the gasketed windows that Saarinen invented for General Motors. That's what these are. They're all gasketed. The company that invented it with him or made it with him, still in business, still doing it. And that's what we used here. These are low iron glass, so they're perfectly clear. And looking into the full array. And there it looks at night from the courtyard. We have not had an opportunity to redo the exterior skin of the dome. That was put on hold and is part of their process as they move forward. It is deteriorating, so they will eventually have to get to it, but at this point, they haven't gotten there. So those are our 2 projects that we did with the 2 Saarinens. Just a couple of notes, things that I've seen is that, you know, Elio to me seems like someone who's very much arts and crafts and very much about the craft of architecture and how they built the architecture. He worked with a lot of the masons out there right on the site. Obviously, he lived right there, and worked with them to build the buildings and worked and try to understand how they put it together. Aero was more of a tectonics. His was about simplification and really kind of expressing the thin lines and the least amount of detail that you would have, is trying to eradicate anything that was not needed. But they both had a very strong and profound influence on materiality of architecture. And I think they both really understood what it was like for people to engage in the architecture and really be in the presence of what these spaces are in a big way. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions or comments.